Hello there and welcome to my channel. My name is Jimmy Wikman and I'm an Atlassian expert. I've been working with Atlassian products since 2012. And in this video we're going to take a look at forms for Jira Service Management and see how we can build dynamic forms that you can use to collect information from your users without having to go through the hassle of creating a bunch of custom fields. So let's just jump into Jira Service Management and show you what forms are. So here we are now in Jira Service Management, and in order for us to be able to work with forms, we need to first go into project settings. So you cannot work with forms unless you have administrative access, so you need to have that one first. And once you have that, then you can just go into project settings and you can locate forms. It is in the second box here, and if you go into forms, it will be blank the first time you show up here. Before we jump in and create new forms, let's first discuss a little bit on what is a form and what is the difference with using a form object from using the standard custom fields or the standard fields that you use for everything else in Jira. And why is it better to use forms than custom fields, and what is the effect that it has on different things? So when you are creating a request type and you're using the regular fields that you have in Jira, so custom fields and the system fields, those fields will have to be configured in Jira, and those data will actually end up in the database connected to that field itself. So if you delete the custom field at any time, then the data that you have related to it will be gone. It cannot be retrieved because the data is connected then to that specific custom field. And the more custom field you add, the larger the index will be that will actually be used for showing everything that you're working with in Jira. And the larger that one becomes, the slower it will become, and performance will suffer. So the more fields you add to your system, the slower it will become. So that's why people like to use forms also, because in a form it's just one data object. It's basically, you're basically creating like a small PDF or a Word file rather than creating multiple data objects in custom fields. So that makes the form from a performance perspective much easier to work with. It's easier on the system. It does not affect other systems the same way as custom fields do. And for everyone who likes to have control over their own destiny in Jira and that they hate being at the mercy of the Jira system administrators, Forms is also completely free from that connection. So you can do whatever you want. You can create any field you want. You can create any information you want. And unlike with custom fields where you have to actually request that the system administrator update information, you are in full control when you're working with forms. And I do that with a little bit of an asterisk, because there are scenarios where you still will have that connection with a custom field. So we're going to take a look at that one also. And then you are still stuck in that, how should I put it, dependency, I guess, to the system admins. But let me show you how forms work, and we can discuss a little bit more about the intricacies of connecting it with different custom fields a little bit later on. So when you create a new form, you will have this big blue button as always, and as normally you can have from a template. And Atlassian have done 217. They're going really bananas with all the predetermined templates for you. So you can pick any one of these and you can see what kind of forms they will automatically create for you. And these will then be something that you can continue working on if you want. We're not going to do that today. We're going to start from scratch, and instead we will go to create blank. So when you create a form, you probably recognize this one. It looks very similar to Confluence, and you can do pretty much the same things. It is just does not have a bunch of macros and stuff like that. This is more like a Word version of Confluence. But before we go in and start building and adding forms here, or fields here, let's first talk about these things up here. So you have the build view that you're looking at now. This is where you build and set up the different form elements. You have translate, where you can connect then different languages, so you can have the information that you put into the form will be translated to different languages. And we're not going to go into that one in this video. It's a video on its own. But yes, you can add those languages so you can actually translate the form that you build here. Then you have the preview, and this one will show you what you have built, so you can actually test it before you save it and publish it. And then nothing will actually happen when you work with the form itself until you connect it to something. And that is what you do under settings. So what you do is you connect then this form to a request type. So if you click on this one, you can then select which of the request types that we have created should this form be connected to. And you can connect more than one form. It's good to know that you connect more than one. But you need to connect it to at least one for it to show up so people can actually use it. And the other thing that you can do is you can create a shareable link. So you can actually share this one and it will have its own view. So you can actually not just having people fill this one out in the portal, but you can actually send it to people. So if they have access to Jira, they can actually fill it out elsewhere. And then you do the same thing. You connect it also to a request type. So you can actually have different ones for these two. And then you decide how do you want this form to handle once you have attached it or when you are working with it. So one thing you can do is you can select if you want to have this form open for edits. So when people have submitted a form, then they are still able to continue working on it, so they can update it. So if you do this one, you can also allow them to ignore all field validation on this form. So if you have things that you're set to be required, then you can actually allow them to ignore that. And you can also save a PDF version every time it is resubmitted. So if you have, for example, forms that are related to very important security matters, for example. So if someone updates that one, you want to have a record of the changes that are being made, then you can have this one. So then you will first have a PDF that is created on when they submit the ticket. And then every subsequent change, every time you edit, for example, or the user updates something, if you allow them to using this one, then it will create a new PDF. So you will have basically a change log in PDF form for your history of that ticket. You can also lock the form. So by default, it locks the form, or it doesn't. You need to have one of these basically. And by default, it is not locked, it's just not editable anymore, so it's not locked per se. But if you choose this one, then it is locked, so only the admins in the product, so not even the agents can actually change anything. And then you can have then, when you are working with the ticket, then you can show this one as a recommended. So this is good for when you're working, for example, with internal ticketing. When you're working with internal work parts. So if you have, for example, let's say from the Jira world, let's say you have a ticket that has been submitted that wants to have a change for a workflow, for example, then I can have an internal form that will just give me the steps. How do I set these up and what rules do I need to abide to? And that form can then be internal, so it's only seen by me. So then when I'm working with that one, this one will show up at the top as a recommended. So it's kind of like starring it for a specific then request type. So that was the settings for us. And we're going to go through this one and actually create one so you can see how it looks when we are attaching it. So when we are working here, let's first go through these. So you have the different text styles. So you have the normal text and the header that you can use. You have the bold and italic, and you have underline and code, subscript, and strike through. So they're the normal ones. And of course you can align it any way you want. You can change the colors, and just like in Confluence, you can change it to anything you want, but you have a few predefined values here. And you can create some lists, and that one can be good for giving instructions, for example. And then you have a few then items that you can use and that are macros. So you can use links, table, layouts, code snippet, which is the same one as you have here. You have an info panel, you have quotes, divider, and status. So you can play around with all of these and see how you can actually build this one. And as you can imagine, this is much more powerful than using the normal request type, which would basically just output a form with very short text that you will actually have it to describe what's supposed to be done. So we can just call this one so this is the Jira incident form. And once you are giving it a name, this is now where you are going to start adding the content of the form. And this one is divided into two types. So you will have the sections, and sections is basically a page. You can consider that one. It's a data object where you can put fields in. And the other one is field. So what you do is you can choose in the beginning if you just want to have a field, or if you want to start with a section. And the purpose of using sections is that you can actually show them based on previous selections. So if I start by adding a section here now, and we can first name it then, intro, and then I can select then, do I always show this one, or do I want to have this one conditionally? So this is the first one, we don't have any selection, so it will be shown always. And then anything below this one will then be what will be shown for this section. So if I add another section below here now, and I will have then this selection. And for now I need to have this one for always, because I don't have any field here yet to choose. So if I look at the types of field that I can actually add to the form and the type of information I can receive from it, we have then the short text, the long text, and the paragraph. So you get a visual idea of the length of these ones. You can email URLs, you can have radio buttons and checkboxes, and you can have drop-down and multi-select drop-downs. And this one is quite new. This is where you will have a cascading drop-down. So depending on what you choose on the first side of the drop-down, you will have another value on the second one. So for example, if you select a country, then you can have a bunch of cities showing up on the left side. Or if you select a product, then you can have a selection of accesses, for example. Then you have different date fields, date, time, and time. And so these one are depending on how granular you need the date object to be. You can select numbers, and you can have user fields, and you can have asset objects. And for those of you who use assets, this is really good. So what we will do here, I will just create a drop-down for this example. So I will create a drop-down, and I will give this a name. Very creative of me today, and I can have a description. So just so you can see where it shows up. So then it shows up right under the title here. And then I can have two choices here, or I can have as many as I want. So I can have yes, and I press enter to create a new one, and no will be the second one. And if I want, I can have an other here. So this one will actually add the other here. Oh, I didn't press enter like that. So the other will allow them to then make any selections, basically. We don't want that. We just want to have these two. I can set the default response, so I can have that it is predefined as yes, for example. That I can do. Doesn't make any sense in this case, but if you have a specific set of data that you want one to be preset, you can do that. And then you can link it to a Jira field. And this is where the magic comes in when you have data that you want to fetch or that you want to keep. So let's see, it is, for example, the type of work that needs to be done, or if it's connected to a financial object, for example, who should pay for this, or if it's connected to a user, or anything else that you feel like this is data that I want to have reporting on, or that is important that I have some kind of filtering on. Because everything that is in the form will just be one data object, and you cannot use that for searching. So you cannot search for information that is within a form. To some degree, you can do it in the Forms API, but not as a user inside of Jira. So sometimes you need to have certain data that is then connected to an actual field in Jira. And this is where you will link that. So you will see all of these things that you can have that are then existing fields in Jira. You can have data connections, so you can actually connect outside of the form. Don't recommend using that one, but you can if you want. And then you can select if you want this one to be required or not. So if you don't set it to required, then people can skip it. And if you click this one, you will have a little red star, and it will tell you you cannot bypass that one. You can also make sure that you have required choice. So this one requires you to make a choice. This one doesn't make any sense here because, well, you have two choices and one is actually pre-selected. And then you can select if you want to have a field key for it. And this is more for when you're working with the APIs, so it's easier to actually fetch this question. So you can actually work with it outside of the form. So now we have created one, and if we go to preview here now, you will see that we have the drop-down, we have yes, and we have no. So what we want to do then is we want to take this section, and just so we can see that it works, let's add an info panel here. So just go information, and we do that like that. So everyone knows that it is important. Now what I want to do is, because you can see in preview now, this one will show. I don't want it to show. I only want it to show after I selected one of these. So I can then go into the section here, and I can say, show this conditionally. And I only want to have it when the drop-down, this one, is selected, and I want it only when they say no. So now if I go back to the preview here, you will see it doesn't show up anymore. And if I select yes, nothing happens. But when I select no, and this information will show. And this will allow you to create then quite elaborate forms that you can then use for multiple purposes, depending on what selection people have selected before. And just going to show you how it looks like. Let's make another section here, and this one then can be connected to yes, and I want to have this one before the no, because that's how the form looked. And this one will then be yes, and we'll have this conditionally based on drop down, and it will be then if you select yes. And for this one I want to have the description field. I want people to fill out what is the problem. But I want to connect that one to the description field in Jira to make sure that when they submit this one, it's not just in the form. I want to have it also in the description field. So I'll add a field. I want to have a paragraph. And just to show you, it doesn't really matter. I can have checkboxes here. It does not matter which one I select. Because the moment I select this one and I select the description, it will tell me that whatever you have selected here now does not match this field. So then it tells you, in order for you to be able to use this one and connect it to a Jira field, you need to change the field type. And all you have to do is click on this orange button or yellow button here, and automatically it will change to the correct type. And now you can name this anything you want. You can have steps to reproduce, for example. And you can have a description. And this is a new word, dead description. It is, we can just do this. This is a description. And you can have it required. So people have to fill this one in. And you can also set now when you have a text field, you cannot have any less than 100 characters, for example. If you do that, it will actually fail you. And you cannot have any more than 101. So it's very specific, 100 characters or no go. You can also have it in words, so then it will calculate the spaces between, if you want to have that one. For this one, let's have it just at 100 minimum, just to show you how that one works. So now we have, if you look at what we have here, so if it goes to no, then we just show you information about it, and if you go to yes, then we show the steps to reproduce in this case. So let's save these. So now the form, if we go back to form, it will now exist here, and it will be saved here, but it isn't connected to anything. So I want to go into it again, go to settings, I want to attach this, and I want to attach this then to the Jira incident, like so. And let's make it a shareable link as well for Jira incident. I want to have this open for edits, and I want to show it as recommended, and I want to save a PDF for it, just so we can show you what this one looks like. And then I will save the changes. Now if we go back, it will now be connected to a Jira incident. So if I go now to the portal here, we reload this one, and I click on the Jira incident, you will see that I have the summary. That one was not part of the form. This one is actually part of the request type. And then I will have this, so if I select yes here, then you would, there you go, it was a little bit slow. Then you will get the form here that we had. And if I select no, then you will have the information. So for the summary, this is the name of the ticket then, just call it ticket test. And I will use the yes, and I will have then here any, or let's do it the way most people do. And we just use caps lock, and everything is wrong. And always when people do that, they have 3 exclamation marks. So, and now if I send this one, now you see it has to be more than 100 characters. So what I will do, like every customer that you will have, they will just copy this one and they will repeat it until those 99 character it goes away. And now if I send this one, you will now see this is how the form will look for the customer. So on the outside they will have this one, and they can change this one now. So they can actually change this one to a no if they want and resubmit it. But just for us, we want to keep it like this. And if I go then to the inside, and so we go inside of Jira, you will now see that what we had in the form, let's take this one away. And what we now have inside the form is that this one will now come from the form itself. We connect it to the description field. So this one will now be pasted into our description. And then we will have the form down here. And this one will now contain the information that we have requested in the form. And we can now work with the user to actually solve this one. So this one will make it so that we get a bunch of information. We can have literally hundreds of fields here, but we can collapse it so it will just be in a very small format like this. So it's only there when we actually need it. We don't need to pollute all of the Jira view here with a bunch of new custom fields to actually have all of this. We don't need to use tabs to hide them and things like that. It's just there in the form. And what is even better is that you can see that we have a little plus sign here. So if I want, I can now add more forms for it. So let's see, they said that this was a Jira incident, but it turned out that this one is actually an email incident. So it's the email pickup that doesn't work. So whatever they have filled in for Jira is not really what I want. So I can actually click on the plus sign here, and I can now select another form. Now we only have one, but you can then create new forms, and you can have those added to this one. But you can also do this. So let me just see if I can do it here. So you can use this one. So if you use this one, you have this one. Let me just show you, it's easier. So if you click on this one will now become internal. So you see it will now become yellow, and in the let's see, the portal, we have closed that one. In the portal, this one will now be gone for the customer, because this one is now only for the agents that work in this project. And if I want to change this one, let's say I had an internal one, but I want to push it now to the customer, then you can do the opposite. So you can make the form external. So then you can push it out to the customer. And the benefit of this having an internal form and an external form is that you can create, like I said, instructions for it. So for example, if you are working with an incident, or you're working with any type of work, then you probably have a process for it. Then you have some steps that you need to do to actually verify if this is correct or not. So then you can actually you can add a form. Apparently not. Yeah, you had it here. So you can select a form and you can add that one. So now I have 2 incident form, and this one automatically becomes internal. So you can work with this one now just with you and your team, until you have completed the task. So in this one you can have multiple forms, and you can even push to the customer multiple forms. So if we do that here, then they will actually have 2 forms. So let's just show you how that one works. So we'll just go back and go to the portal again. And I will just select my request. So here now you will see that we have 2 forms. This is how the customer will see this information. So that is how you can work with the forms. This is how you can create very dynamic forms that does not tax the Jira platform or the index of the Jira platform. This is how you can create forms that you are 100% in control of, and you can choose which of the information you want to push into Jira as custom fields. So I hope this one was useful for you, and if you want to know more about any specific of the different fields here, because they behave a little bit differently, and then we can you can just add a comment to this video and we can go through that specifically. But with that, I hope this introduction to forms was useful, and I guess the only thing that remains for me to say right now is that I hope this was a good video for you, and I wish you a good day and an awesome week.